I am taking the liberty of quoting a dreadful case which I witnessed myself about 1926. At that time I had an acquaintance, a young man of 24, of good family, who had just finished matriculation. He was working as a clerk with the view to get steady employment in the government service. Sometime in April, a friend rang me to inform me that K, as I will call the unfortunate youth, had become insane. He was absenting himself from his office duties, wandering by rail without tickets throughout the whole district, and indecently attacking women, and therefore was wanted by the police. It was hard to believe that this handsome, athletic, and usually very quiet boy was able to commit such senseless deeds. Next morning, I saw a column about him in the newspapers. The police were searching intensively for him, after he had overpowered and beaten 2 constables who had tried to arrest him because of an assault in a train. I went to visit the landlord, where K lodged, as his parents were living in another town, some 100 miles away. The landlord told me that he was much affected by the disaster which had befallen K, whom he liked and considered to be his best lodger. I will tell you confidentially, said the old man, that K had suffered from violent self-abuse, masturbation, for some months past. He had even sought medical advice, and that was how the landlord knew about the matter. They had told the young man that if he did not stop the offense, he would finish in a mental home. That was the last blow for the poor fellow. He eventually lost all hope. He knew of the danger that lay in his bad habit, but he lacked the willpower to end it. Friends tried to encourage him to marry as soon as possible to enable K to be cured in a natural way. He already had a fiancée, a very nice and devoted girl, who worked in the same office as himself, but he began to leave her and she did not see him for weeks on end. At that time, I was at the beginning of my hermetic studies, and had gone far enough to know about larvas and obsessions, which are often the causes of men's ruin. Indeed, this is the case with self-abuse, which is very dangerous for physically strong people, as they offer much more scope for the malicious beings from the astral plane. Theoretically, I even knew about the use of magic swords against obsessing beings, but I had not had any practical experience. That evening, I sat alone in my flat with my books, separated from my neighbors by thick walls. About 11 p.m., my doorbell rang. That is K, I suddenly thought. He may be dangerous. I was not physically afraid of him when he was normal, for I felt myself stronger, but now he was insane, and that makes a man many times more dangerous and violent. I put my Browning in my pocket and opened the door. It was hard to recognize the formerly so elegant and handsome youth. K was shabbily dressed. One of his shoes was missing. His hair was uncombed and he was unshaven, with mad eyes and movements like those of a wild cat. I silently showed him the way to my lounge room. He smiled in an idiotic way and asked if I was not afraid of him. I decided to play the dangerous game to the end. No, my friend, you know that I am much stronger than you. Remember our classic fight a year ago? After all, you were my friend and never did anything wrong in my eyes. Rather, I would like to help you in whatever way I can. This worked. K's face lost some of its expression of a baited beast. He sat on the divan and asked for a cigarette. I felt he was hungry and so went and made him some tea and sandwiches. After the meal, he became still more lucid. He openly confessed his trouble to me. The description of the sensual and indecent visions which excited him to commit his offenses were terrible. I realized his position. No persuasion would give any help. The thing had gone too far, and no usual means could destroy the grip of the repulsive obsession. He might be arrested at any moment, and he told me that he would not surrender alive to the police. You are studying magic things. Perhaps you have something in your arsenal to help me, he said. I had some literature about the fighting of larvas, but in order to practice it, I needed to study the instructions for some time, and that was what I told him, asking him to visit me the next evening. Well, I will come if I am still alive, he said to me sadly. Then the moments of lucidity once more gave way to insanity. His eyes became wild, and he looked around him with a lascivious smile. Don't you see them? Look how nice they are. These naked girls round us. Don't you also want? I cannot quote his next words because of their horrible depravity. I do not see anything, I said harshly to Kay. You are mad today. Come tomorrow and we will try to do something for you. Yes, I will come, but if you cannot help. And a note of threat and hatred sounded in his voice. I was really happy when the door was locked after he left. I never saw him alive again, for next morning the papers carried the sad story of Kay's end. Shortly after midnight he appeared at the railway station, was recognized by the police and fatally shot when he attacked them while resisting arrest. I saw his body lying in the city morgue with a large wound above the left collarbone. The strangely shrunken face wore something of a sad smile, as his half-open mouth showed his teeth covered with blood from the internal hemorrhage after the piercing of the aorta by the pitiless bullet. The larva had performed its fearful task so as to free itself from the body which it had despoiled and brought to such infamy. The body of an insane person can also be occupied by an elementar of an inferior, idiotic type, which fights the man's proper astrosome, inducing by turns periods of madness and lucidity. But when are these things possible? Firstly, when a man is passive enough and not sufficiently occupied with his body to defend it against the astral intruders. Larvas can easily enter the body of a sleeping man, as well as that of someone who has been disappointed by life and who no longer sees any purpose in it. Men who practice some vice can also be victims of larvas, which represent just the same vice. Then the astral monster comes as if invited. Another elementar can easily enter and occupy the body of a man who has exteriorized himself, consciously or unconsciously. Therein lies the danger of such occult practices, and that is why no honest occultist will betray the astral techniques necessary for such exteriorization until his pupil is fully qualified to engage in it. We do unconsciously exteriorize much more often than most people suppose. Fear, great bitterness, a position that lacks any good and foreseeable solution, briefly everything which compels us to hate the physical life intensely. All these make exteriorization easier. A sudden joy can bring similar results. In such a moment the soul is so filled with gratitude for the astral beatitude it experiences at the moment that it unconsciously strives for the astral plane and can easily exteriorize itself. Sometimes the astrosome which has been expelled by an intruder can return and remove the unwanted tenant. Then we have temporary insanity. But sometimes the astrosome cannot return, and then a foreign entity operates in the body, resulting in constant insanity, or in the best possible case, an unfavorable change of personality, usually ending in a fairly quick destruction of the physical body. If both of the astrosomes remain in the one body, and fight each other, there will be periodical insanity. As we can see, Hermetic occult philosophy offers some logical solutions, for those who have studied it, for cases which usually remain permanent enigmas for official science. But a day will come, when that which today is still considered as unreal and superstitious will be recognized with the help of our more wise and advanced brethren of the far-off future. At present, we have to be satisfied if we come to know some deeper things before others do. But to know more also means to bear more responsibility. This is the cardinal rule in all occult initiatory schools. We cannot be truly initiated until we are able to recognize and to bear the burdens of knowledge.